Okay, so we're kicking off our new podcast. I'm here. My name is Shannon Clement. I'm a brand storytelling expert and working with Scott Ballam, who is in charge of our demand generation for clients at the Social Recruiters. We want to bring to you today some insights about who we are, what we do, but the real purpose of our podcast is to talk about how social recruiting can help your business improve your recruitment process and really optimize your hiring and the attraction of your employees to your business.
Definitely, definitely. So I think there is the big topic for us to get out there is a lot of information that I think marketers seem to keep to themselves, and I think recruiters keep to themselves, and really being able to bridge the gap and ensuring that agencies can utilize some real good marketing techniques that are available these days to expand upon their reach and to create systems that really do make their agency better.
From the typical like posting on job boards
That's right.
and having recruiters that go out there and obviously work individually with clients and using their own techniques to do that manually. But yeah, there's a real gap, I think, in the marketplace where there isn't enough volume of applicants coming in, and that seems to have been the issue especially during the pandemic, is clients, well, our clients who are recruiters, and also employers, they just aren't seeing enough people that are qualified, that are applying for their jobs.
That's right.
So I think that was part of the reason you and I decided to put together the social recruiters
Mm.
after working with clients on optimizing their advertising on social media, and looking to get leads and sales for clients. But that expertise, I guess, translated quite well into the employment space where we can do the same thing to attract candidates and
Yeah,
help out employers.
I think the big thing as well is that with employment going the way it was going towards the end of the pandemic, with the amount of jobs that were being listed, and then to be on the cusp of a recession as well, it really threw a lot of recruitment agencies and employers into this weird situation where there were a lot of jobs, there weren't people applying for the jobs. They're on the cusp of maybe having to make sacrifices and cut back on stuff as well. So it was this really awkward situation where they didn't know how they were going to advertise to make sure that they could keep quality, applicants coming in, and meanwhile trying to feather a storm as well of the recession that's looming as well. So it's been a very weird situation for a lot of agencies and a lot of employers. Um,
Yeah, and I think those learnings were like, we went into it thinking that, okay, this is the way that we're going to start attracting these passive candidates that are on social media, that are maybe a little bit worried about whether they're going to keep their job, or do they still want to work for a company if they are
mm,
thinking about transitioning to remote work. What's going to happen once they go back into the office? There are all these questions, I think, in the candidates' minds. So looking at jobs, I think, was something that they were passively doing on, places like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
mm,
Um, and once we sort of harnessed that opportunity of those, finding those people, creating those audiences, and really understanding what their motivations were, that's when we really started to see those results coming in of, wow, there's this whole untapped audience of passive job seekers, who, a lot of them, when it came to it, weren't passive. They were ready to go.
that's
They were
right.
ready to start applying to those jobs. And if they saw a good match, they were good to jump on the opportunity.
Yeah, I think the big thing as well is that a lot of those people didn't understand. Like they weren't particularly seeing the opportunities that were around them because they weren't actively on job seeking websites like Indeed and those kind of places. So when you're able to create a system to show them that there's opportunities out there, and that they could be getting potentially a pay rise for doing the same work that they're currently doing, these people just jumped on it. And I think that's really crucial to understand for both an agency and the employer, is that, are you showing your jobs in the right place? Is there a right way to go about things that you may be overlooking?
Yeah, and it was interesting to see the different fields and how, some fields were just exploding in terms
Mm,
of people, like in the healthcare sector. Obviously, there was a big demand there for jobs and for employers to find those right candidates. But then there was a lot of people who wanted to comment and engage and then share
mm,
some of these opportunities because all of a sudden they were getting paid for training.
yeah,
It wasn't like they had to go out on a limb and put out all this money to train into a different field. That was being given to them in some situations. So
yeah.
that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are in certain industries, whether it's healthcare or even the tech industries, there's a lot of opportunities in tech as far as education goes through their even employers or other employers that they're unaware of, that they just don't. I think a lot of people that are quite passive in their employment process or even just their life in general, they have a certain tendency to be drawn to certain things without realizing it, especially if it's in front of them. A lot of people, whether it's a job application or a progression in their education or their life themselves, some people don't look for it, right? They things that just pop into their plate, so to speak, whether it's on social media or LinkedIn or a YouTube video or wherever it is, seeing an opportunity that kind of spikes their mind to take the next step, I think is overlooked from an agency's perspective a lot of the time, because they're expecting people to be applying for jobs and continually looking for positions rather than maybe offering up a position to somebody who's not, that may tick all the boxes, that's not looking.
Which isn't always the case. Like there are those people that, do go and look at jobs when they're kind of in that desperate mode sometimes
That's right, yeah.
because they've either just got let go or they know that they can't work somewhere anymore. It's just gotten too bad for them to keep working there.
Yeah.
And that's when they're at that desperate time. But what about those people who they're not extremely desperate, but they are in the back of their mind thinking, maybe there are other positions out there, but I don't even know where to start looking.
Yeah, I think
So,
the pandemic as well made a lot of people sit back and realize, wow, can my position be done remotely? Can I work from home? And are there other people in a similar industry to me that are getting the ability to work from home, or a hybrid model that I don't have the opportunity to? I think those questions became a lot more, especially at an executive level, or that kind of intermediate between executive and the higher up. They're questions that people wanted. Lifestyle became a huge thing where people were able to work from home and work remotely, and it became a regular thing very quickly. And for those people that were working in tech and any of those kind of industries that had the opportunity to work remotely, they feel like it should be given to them. And in
yeah.
certain cases, yes. In certain cases, no. But it really is a question of, are there opportunities out there that they're not seeing? You know.
Well, and in some cases, those people that were working remotely because they had to and they were mandated to, they don't want to anymore. They
Mm,
want to go back to an office. So they're looking, and maybe they're not, actively going to job boards and looking for jobs that are in office. But when they see that a job is in office, then that's something that's going to catch their eye and make them think, well, okay, well, maybe
yeah.
this is more suited to my personality or my lifestyle. And they'll want to jump on that. But those aspects of the job can be easily promoted through ads and on social channels.
That's the biggest thing, right? Is that each of those applicant audiences have their own touch point that agencies and recruiters need to be aware of. And I think that was a big thing, a big learning curve for us, is that sometimes it's very easy for the agencies we're dealing with to just be in this process of, okay, we need to turn over a lot of people. We need, especially when it's high volume of applicants we need to get in. They don't realize that every applicant has a different mindset of what route they're taking to get into that particular job. So when we see it firsthand from, dealing with agencies, and they're like, okay, we need to get X amount of people in as soon as possible. This is a volume task we need taken care of straight away. A lot of agencies just see that as, okay, we've got to throw a lot of money at it. And that's not necessarily the case. It's finding the right system that's going to touch the right people in the right way to get them to actually follow the process. Yeah.
And in some cases, the volume backfired.
Yeah.
Like volume in some cases can actually, like throwing more money at an advertising campaign can hurt that advertising campaign, because either it wasn't started early enough. So if you had the volume that you could have tacked on at the beginning, and it could have the ad could have ran for longer, you would have made better use of those advertising dollars.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The other thing as well is, I know I'm kind of going off on a bit of a tangent here, but when agencies look at recruitment budgets for a specific job, I think sometimes they go a little too extreme. We've seen budgets that are, when we start looking at frequency rates and engagement rates, and what those ads and what those positions are actually being filled, those applicants being filled, sometimes it's easy for a agency to just say, okay, well, you need to throw X amount of dollars at this. We need $5,000-$6,000 a month just in this ad campaign, and we sit there and we're looking at the audience for this ad. It's not
Isn't big enough.
It's nowhere near this. It's nowhere near this. We're not sending these people gold envelopes in their mailbox. We can do this at a much cheaper rate. We should be looking at utilizing some of that budget as a retargeting, to bring in other people at a later date if we need to, because this audience is going to grow itself. And it's sometimes missed. So I think understanding that from an agency as well at the onset is really important, because I think sometimes they think, okay, well, we just want everybody to see the ad 10,000 times. And that's not the answer,
Yeah, and the audience, after they've seen the ad 6 times, 5 times, like
Exactly.
they've checked out. They're not excited anymore about the job, or they're annoyed that they keep seeing that job, and they'll purposely not engage.
That ad's being throttled anyway, because it's going to hit that kind of, frequency window that's just, okay, well, we're going into limbo stage where the algorithm's going to throttle the ad and it's not going to perform. And again, that's something that most agencies don't know.
And what do you think your biggest learning was in terms of the targeting and the audience development side of running an employment ad on Facebook specifically?
So Facebook,
because that's where we saw a lot of traction.
I mean, Facebook and Instagram, I mean, obviously talking with, Facebook and Meta themselves as part of the, that whole process of finding that frequency range, the right frequency range, to ensure that the ad's being seen by the right amount of people. It's not in a hit or miss window where it's going to either be hidden from the ads because it's over, it's being shown too many times. I think that Facebook themselves weren't aware of the way that the algorithm was actually throttling the ads. And I think, when you're talking to executives from Facebook and Meta, that this is a real thing. We can see this. We've run 200 or 300 ads in this window. We know that this is being throttled. I can see from the analytics what it's doing. It's painting a picture. And to have them come back after a couple of weeks, I think the biggest eye opener for me was just to give them information that they came back and said, you're right. Like the algorithm is throttling this because it's not getting the right results. This is what we can do to improve it. And a lot of the time we already know, it's that audience window when you're targeting, 100,000 people and you're putting such a big budget at it, that impression window is going to go through it really quickly. So it's forward planning and understanding that. I think the way that employment is different than a normal ad campaign that we'd run in the past for marketing experiences is that there are special requirements and categories that have to be ticked off now after the Cambridge Analytica scandal and the way that Facebook runs their ads. And a lot of people don't realize it. You have to make sure that the ad meets certain requirements in certain ad employment categories within your area, whether it's the US or Canada or anywhere around the world. And if you don't meet those requirements, it's actually hurting the campaign if the campaign even gets approved at all.
Right. And it used to be, I don't know, maybe it was more than a year ago now, that you could do that more granular targeting with your ad campaign in terms of choosing, gender and age.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of factors that you could choose when you're targeting a certain audience to show your ad. But that is all gone now. And I think employers need to know that, your ad will be more broadly marketed to a bigger audience. And, rightly so, because some of those people that would be interested may have not seen the ad because you had an idea in your mind of who your audience was, and maybe that wasn't entirely true. So with that more broad market, it was interesting. My big takeaway was the location targeting. And when we saw in the smaller locations with less people, like in smaller towns, when we were targeting for specific jobs in those towns, we really had to adjust that budget in a way that it was going to last, and it wasn't going to hit people over the head with an ad 10 times because it got throttled so quickly, right? So, and then maybe, expanding the area if the job was going remote, because traditionally they were thinking, oh, okay, well, I can only put it in this area because that job was in a specific location. But once they went remote, it was like, okay, well, you can expand that location now because you don't necessarily need to live there to work there.
That's right. I think these are all topics that we'll get into throughout our podcast series. I think that we can expand upon a lot of these, little tips and tricks for anybody listening as well that that we've kind of been able to bring from 30 plus years experience in marketing. Obviously, we've both been in the industry for a long time. And really make sure that agencies and employers and even applicants are aware of what they should be getting and some systems that are going to make that process a lot better. So,
well, I'm excited to drive awareness of the whole employee brand story and employee branding, so that employers understand how important it is to attracting those candidates and retaining them. Because it's not just about the story you tell, it's about living that story as well. And I think we'll get into more examples of that later on. But there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So guys, it was a quick introduction to the social recruiters. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we look forward to the next one coming.